The beginning. From Tupelo to Memphis. On January 8, 1935, in a small two-room house in Tupelo, Mississippi, a boy was born who would forever change the landscape of music and popular culture. His name was Elvis Aaron Presley, though few could have imagined that this child, born into poverty and hardship, would become one of the most influential figures of the 20th century. Elvis came into the world as a twin, but tragedy struck immediately his brother Jesse Garon was stillborn. This profound loss would haunt his mother, Gladys Love, for the rest of her life. She would raise Elvis with an intensity born from grief and an almost obsessive devotion that would shape every aspect of his life. His father, Vernon Presley, was a sharecropper struggling to make ends meet in the impoverished rural South. The Presley family had virtually nothing, yet they had each other, and for young Elvis, that proved to be everything. The early years in Tupelo were marked by economic struggle and social instability. Vernon's attempts at steady work were frequently interrupted by misfortune. When Elvis was 3 years old, Vernon was convicted of forging a check on a farm. The family's meager circumstances forced them to move constantly, following whatever work opportunities emerged. Yet within this poverty, music flourished. The Presley family was deeply religious, attending the First Assembly of God Church, where gospel music filled the air. Elvis absorbed these melodies and harmonies, and the emotional power of gospel would remain a cornerstone of his musical identity throughout his life. As a young boy, Elvis was shy and sensitive, quite different from the energetic performer he would later become. He was often the target of neighborhood children, his unusual hairstyle and gentle demeanor marking him as different. His mother fiercely protected him, and he remained devoted to her in a way that would characterize his entire existence. When he was 11 years old, Gladys and Vernon decided to move the family north, seeking better opportunities. They chose Memphis, Tennessee, a city on the Mississippi River that was beginning to pulse with new musical energy. Memphis, the catalyst years. The Presley family arrived in Memphis in 1948, when Elvis was 13. The city was a revelation compared to rural Mississippi. Memphis was a crucible of American music, blues, country, gospel, and the emergent sounds of rhythm and blues all collided in the streets, clubs, and recording studios. For Elvis, already showing signs of musical curiosity, Memphis was the perfect place to discover his destiny. As a teenager, Elvis stood out. He wore his hair long and slicked back in a style that made some uncomfortable. His clothes were unconventional for the era. He favored flashy colors and unusual patterns. He was still introverted, preferring to observe rather than participate in typical teenage activities. Yet music called to him with an irresistible force. He spent hours listening to everything: the country music of Hank Williams, the blues of B.B. King, the gospel harmonies of the Statesmen, and the emerging sounds of early rock and roll. In 1953, when Elvis was 18, he made a momentous decision. He walked into Sun's studio in Memphis, operated by the visionary producer Sam Phillips. Elvis paid $4 to record 2 songs, My Happiness and That's When Your Heartaches Begin. The recording was amateurish, his voice still uncertain, but something unmistakable was there, a quality that would later define his career. Elvis was searching, experimenting, trying to find his voice by blending all the musical influences that had shaped him. For the next 2 years, Elvis worked various jobs while continuing to pursue music. He was a truck driver, a movie theater usher, and an equipment operator. But music consumed his thoughts. He had learned the guitar and spent countless hours perfecting his craft, studying the styles of artists he admired. He returned to Sun Studio repeatedly, hoping to find an opening, a chance to record something more substantial. The Sun Records era. A voice emerges. Everything changed in the summer of 1954. Sam Phillips had been searching for a singer who could bridge the gap between country and rhythm, and blues, someone who could bring the emotional authenticity of black music to white audiences, thereby broadening appeal and breaking down musical barriers. When Elvis returned to Sun Studio and recorded "That's All Right," something magical happened. The song was a cover of an Arthur Crudup blues number, but Elvis transformed it. His voice had a distinctive quality that was neither purely country nor purely blues. It was something entirely new. The recording featured a rhythmic, almost rockabilly sound, with a driving energy that was electrifying. When the song was released in July 1954, it quickly gained traction on local radio stations. The response from listeners was immediate and enthusiastic. Suddenly, Elvis was no longer an unknown kid with dreams. He was becoming a presence on the Memphis music scene. But success brought challenges. Radio station WHBQ in Memphis played "That's All Right" in heavy rotation, and listeners flooded the station with requests. Local venues began inviting this young singer to perform. On July 30, 1954, Elvis made his first public performance at the Overton Park Shell in Memphis. He was nervous, visibly anxious, but when he took the stage and began to sing, the electricity was undeniable. The audience responded with enthusiasm, though many were uncertain about what they were witnessing. This wasn't conventional country music, nor was it pure blues. It was something revolutionary. Sun Studio released several more singles featuring Elvis in late 1954 and 1955. Songs like "Good Rockin' Tonight," "Milk Cow Blues Boogie," and "Mystery Train" showcased an artist developing rapidly, an interpreter of diverse styles who was beginning to synthesize these influences into something distinctly his own. Each release generated more interest, more performances, more loyal followers. Elvis was no longer an unknown truck driver. He was becoming a regional phenomenon. The Rocket to Stardom, 1955–1956. In late 1955, Colonel Tom Parker entered Elvis's life, and everything accelerated dramatically. Parker was a legendary music promoter, a man of questionable ethics, but undeniable business acumen. He saw in Elvis something that few others fully grasped, not just a talented singer, but a complete package with star potential. Parker set about maneuvering Elvis away from Sun Records and toward a major label contract. By November 1955, RCA Records had signed Elvis Presley to an unprecedented contract, paying Sun Records $35,000 for his existing recordings, a fortune at the time. The RCA era began explosively. On January 27, 1956, Elvis recorded "Heartbreak Hotel" in Nashville with legendary session musicians. The song, written by Mayborn Axton and Tommy Durden, was a slow, brooding number that allowed Elvis to showcase his vocal range and emotional depth. When "Heartbreak Hotel" was released, it became an immediate sensation. The song climbed the charts rapidly, crossing over from country to pop to rhythm and blues, an unprecedented achievement that demonstrated Elvis's crossover appeal. But it was Elvis's performances that truly captured the nation's attention. In March 1956, he appeared on The Milton Berle Show, one of the most popular television programs in America. His performance was energetic, featuring the gyrating hip movements and sensual stage presence that would become his trademark. The reaction was explosive. Some viewers were thrilled, others scandalized. Conservative commentators expressed outrage, declaring that Elvis's dancing was obscene and immoral. Church leaders condemned him. Parents worried about his influence on their children. Yet this controversy only amplified his fame, transforming him from a regional success into a national phenomenon almost overnight. Throughout 1956, Elvis released a string of hits that dominated the charts. I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog, and Love Me Tender. Each song showcased different facets of his artistry. Don't Be Cruel revealed his softer, more romantic side. Hound Dog, a cover of a blues standard, demonstrated his ability to deliver up-tempo rock and roll with raw energy and attitude. Love Me Tender, featured in his acting debut in the film of the same name, showed his capacity for tender emotional delivery. By the end of 1956, Elvis Presley had transcended the world of music. He was a cultural icon, a symbol of youthful rebellion and newly emergent youth culture. Teenagers worshipped him, their parents feared him, and the entertainment establishment recognized him as a revolutionary force. He had achieved something unprecedented dominance across multiple musical genres and complete crossover appeal. The shy, quiet boy from Mississippi had become the king of rock and roll. Hollywood and military service testing the crown. Riding the wave of his musical success, Elvis transitioned into films. Between 1956 and 1958, he starred in several movies: Love Me Tender, Loving You, and Jailhouse Rock. The films were primarily vehicles for his music and charisma rather than showcases for acting prowess, but they allowed him to reach even broader audiences. Jailhouse Rock, released in 1957, featured one of the most iconic musical sequences in cinema history, a dance number that revealed Elvis's impressive abilities as a performer beyond just singing. Yet just as Elvis's career reached its peak, the unexpected happened. In December 1957, Elvis received his draft notice. The United States military was calling, and even the king of rock and roll could not escape this civic obligation. For Elvis, it was a moment of uncertainty. Would military service diminish his career momentum? Would fans forget him during his absence? However, Elvis handled his military service with dignity and awareness of its public relations implications. He enlisted in the Army on December 20, 1957, and was stationed in Germany, where he served with distinction. Rather than seeking special privileges or attempting to avoid combat duties, Elvis served as an ordinary soldier, which only increased his public approval. His military service transformed his image from rebellious youth to responsible citizen, making him more acceptable to mainstream America and opening doors that had previously been closed. During his service in Germany, Elvis met Priscilla Beaulieu, a 14-year-old girl whose stepfather was stationed nearby. Elvis was 24. The age difference and the circumstances of their meeting would later become controversial, but at the time, Elvis fell in love. The relationship would prove to be one of the most important in his life, leading eventually to marriage and shaping his future in profound ways. The 1960s, reinvention and uncertainty. Elvis was honorably discharged from the Army on March 5, 1960. Upon his return to civilian life and music, many wondered whether he could reclaim his previous status. The music industry had changed during his absence. The British invasion was coming, with bands like the Beatles beginning to transform the musical landscape. Would Elvis remain relevant? The answer came swiftly. Elvis's comeback single, "Stuck on You," released in March 1960, reached #1 on the charts. He appeared on television, performing for the first time in 2 years, and demonstrated that his popularity had only grown during his absence. His fans had remained loyal, and new listeners had discovered his music. However, the 1960s would prove to be a challenging and contradictory decade for Elvis. Musically, he released numerous records, many of them serviceable, but few genuinely memorable. Colonel Parker steered him toward easy, accessible pop material designed to maximize commercial appeal. This strategy generated hits and maintained sales, but it also diluted the raw energy and emotional authenticity that had defined his early work. Critics, particularly serious music enthusiasts, began to view Elvis as a has-been, coasting on past glory, recording forgettable material. The 1960s also saw Elvis increasingly focused on his film career. Between 1960 and 1969, he appeared in over 30 films, most of them lightweight comedies or musicals with thin plots designed primarily to feature Elvis's name and songs. Blue Hawaii, Girls, 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 Viva Las Vegas, and numerous others were commercially successful but artistically uninspired. Many film critics dismissed these movies as contrived and shallow, though audiences often enjoyed them. Yet in 1966, something momentous occurred in Elvis's personal life. He married Priscilla Beaulieu on May 1st at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. The wedding was heavily publicized, and for a time, Elvis seemed to be settling into married life. The couple welcomed their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, on February 1st, 1968. Elvis, once the symbol of dangerous youth rebellion, was now a family man with domestic responsibilities. The Comeback, 1968, and The King Returns. By the late 1960s, Elvis's career had stalled. The films were becoming increasingly ridiculous. The recorded material was uninspired, and serious musicians and critics had largely written him off as a relic of the 1950s. Yet Colonel Parker and Elvis recognized that something needed to change. The music industry itself was transforming, with artists experimenting with more complex material and authentic expression. In June 1968, Elvis returned to the recording studio for the first time in over a year, and the resulting sessions produced material that seemed to recapture something of his earlier vitality. These recordings formed the basis for the '68 Comeback Special, a television special that aired on NBC on December 3, 1968. The special was a triumph. After years of performing primarily in film soundtracks and studio recordings, Elvis returned to live performance before a studio audience. The show featured him in a black leather suit, performing stripped-down arrangements of his classic hits alongside new material. The energy and passion were unmistakable. Critics who had dismissed him as a spent force were forced to reconsider. The '68 Comeback Special demonstrated that Elvis was not merely surviving on past achievements, he was capable of vital, contemporary artistry. The performance rejuvenated his career and restored his credibility among serious music enthusiasts. Following the Comeback Special, Elvis released From Elvis in Memphis, an album recorded in Memphis with producer Chips Moman. The album was a revelation. Songs like In the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds, and Kentucky Rain showcased a mature artist with genuine emotional depth. Suspicious Minds became one of his greatest hits, a sophisticated arrangement that demonstrated Elvis's ability to navigate complex material with nuance and intensity. The final act, Las Vegas, Decline, and Legacy. With his career revitalized, Elvis signed a contract to perform residencies at the International Hotel in Las Vegas. Beginning in 1969, Elvis performed in Las Vegas regularly for the next several years. These performances were spectacular productions, featuring elaborate orchestrations, elaborate costumes, and all the theatrical elements that Las Vegas audiences expected. Elvis performed with genuine energy and commitment, often giving multiple shows per week. Yet the 1970s, despite Elvis's continued commercial success, were complicated and often painful. His marriage to Priscilla deteriorated, and the couple divorced in 1972. The emotional toll of the divorce, combined with the physical demands of constant touring and performing, began to take their toll on Elvis's health and well-being. More troublingly, Elvis developed a significant dependency on prescription medications. Provided by his personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, Elvis consumed increasingly large quantities of various medication stimulants to increase energy, depressants to achieve rest, and painkillers for various physical ailments. By the mid-1970s, Elvis's medication use had become a serious problem, affecting his energy levels, his weight, and his overall health. Nevertheless, Elvis continued performing and recording. Albums like Aloha from Hawaii, 1973, featuring a famous concert performance at the Hawaii International Convention Center, demonstrated that he could still deliver powerful performances. However, the quality of his studio recordings became more inconsistent. He worked with various producers and material of varying quality, sometimes delivering excellent performances, but increasingly recording mediocre material selected by Colonel Parker primarily for commercial considerations. Elvis's personal life became increasingly chaotic. He became involved with Ginger Alden, a young woman 20 years his junior, and they eventually became engaged in 1977. Yet his health continued to deteriorate. He suffered from various ailments, gained significant weight, and struggled with the effects of his medication usage and lifestyle. The End of the King, August 16, 1977. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was found dead in his Graceland mansion in Memphis. He was only 42 years old. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrhythmia, but the true cause was far more complex. A combination of obesity, prescription drug dependency, various health conditions, and the overwhelming stress of maintaining his persona and career. The news shattered millions of people worldwide. Fans mourned the loss of the man who had defined rock and roll. The impact of his death demonstrated the profound cultural significance he had achieved. For a generation, Elvis Presley had been more than just a musician. He was an institution, a symbol of youth, rebellion, and the transformative power of popular culture. In the years following his death, Elvis's legacy has only grown. The music industry and cultural critics have undergone a massive reassessment of his work. Albums that were once dismissed are now recognized as artistic achievements. His influence on music, fashion, performance, and popular culture is now understood as profound and enduring. Artists across multiple genres, cite Elvis as an inspiration. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and countless others have acknowledged their debt to Elvis Presley. Conclusion: The King Lives on. Elvis Presley's life was an American story of profound proportions. A journey from poverty to unimaginable wealth and fame, from anonymity to cultural icon, from youthful rebellion to establishment acceptance, and ultimately to a tragic decline and death that shocked the world. He fundamentally changed music, demonstrating that genre boundaries could be crossed, that an artist could appeal to diverse audiences, and that raw emotional authenticity could transcend conventional notions of musical propriety. He demonstrated that popular entertainment could be an art form worthy of serious consideration. He showed that performers could achieve cultural significance beyond their immediate artistry. The catalog of Elvis's recordings, from the raw energy of his early Sun studio work to the sophisticated arrangements of his 1970s comeback, represents one of the most important bodies of work in popular music history. While not every recording was exceptional, the best of his work endures, continuing to move audiences more than 40 years after his death. Today, Graceland stands as a pilgrimage site where fans from around the world come to honor the memory of the man who was, and remains, the king of rock and roll. Elvis Presley did not merely perform music, he transformed popular culture, influenced generations of artists, and left an indelible mark on the world. His story remains a fascinating testament to the power of music and the profound impact that a single individual can have on the cultural landscape.